So back in Visual Studios, we're now going to be making the wind detection system for our game. So as an example, this is what the grid's going to look like. So this is player 1 went there, player 2 went there. Say player 1 went like there, and there, 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 and right here. So you can see that there's connect 4 right here, and we're just going to be cycling through each of those combinations. So there's the diagonal, there's the opposite direction diagonal, and then there's the horizontal and the vertical. So we're going to be making 4 separate loops for each of those. We're going to start off by making a new function. This will be called bool did win, and we're going to be wanting to input the player number. So if this returns true, that means that player won, and then false, that means no players won yet. So right here, we need to be doing each of the 4 combinations. So the easiest one, at least I think, is the horizontal one first. So we have a for loop for this. This one's going to be just the x variable, and then it's going to be going to the length of the board. So going back to here, for horizontal, let's see, so we start here, it's going to go across, and it's going to only have to check 4. So it's actually going to keep going until it gets to right here, because it's going to go right here, these 4, and this one's going to check these 4, and then this one's going to check these 4 right here, and then the next one's going to check these 4. So right when we get to here, we want to stop, because if we do this one, then it's going to be checking in a one that doesn't exist here, and it's going to show an error. So we're going to just be wanting to go to the length of this board minus the 3 right here. So it's going to be length minus 3. Next, we just want to loop through the whole height here. So we're going to create another for loop inside here. And this is going to be the y height. And then this one's going to be called, this one's going to be the height of the board. So looking at this, here I'm going to move this part down just so we can see it easier. So looking at this, we have length of the board, so this is going to be doing up to this point right here, because then it's 4, and then it's going to be going all the way up and checking each one. There is a way to make it faster. Like for this one, you can just say if there's a 0 there, like say if there's a 0 here, that means you know that this whole column has to be 0, so you don't have to check it. But that'll make the coding a lot harder, and for the most part, this is only going to be looping 20 times and doing a simple calculation, so it's not going to be a crazy amount of work. Let's see, next, we need to do all the checks. So this is just looping through each thing. Now we need to actually see if that number there works. So we're going to do an if statement, and then in this if statement, there's going to be a lot of stuff. We're going to say if the board state x comma y equals a player number, which is this thing, the player number, if the player number equals the board state again, but this time it's going to be instead of x comma y, which would be like, say, starting right here, it's going to be the one to the right of it, so it'd be x plus 1. And we're just going to copy and paste this a few times. And change this to a 2. So then it's saying we're starting there, we're going to check this one, this one, this one. So you plus 2 and plus 3. So now no matter where we're at, say we're going up here, we're right here, we're going to check this one, and then plus 1, so this one, and then this one, and then this one. And we're going to make sure they're all equal the number that we're inputting. And then if it does, that means a player won, at least horizontally, which we'll say horizontal. And then right here, we're just gonna say return true. And I think I typed this before. You want to put return false at the bottom here, just so that if any of these loops go through the whole thing and it didn't find somebody that won, we just want to return false that nobody won. The last thing we do before we give a quick test is we need to go up here to when we actually take our turn. We want to go right here and say did win. Oh, we're gonna want to put this in an if statement. If did win, we're gonna be doing player 1, so we need to input a 1 because it's inputting the player number. And we want to put a debug statement, so we'll just say, I don't know, player, debug.log. And I'm going to make this a log warning just so it's more obvious to us. It doesn't really matter if we put log warning error or just normal log. What I basically use is the log ones are kind of a lot of information. The warnings are the stuff that are very big information or like kind of things you need to consider if you want to make it, and then an error is something that you actually messed up. I mean, that's how I do it. You can kind of do it however you want, because you can put as many debug.errors in the Unity that you at least create yourself in code and it won't mess anything up. So player 1 1. Put an exclamation point too. We're gonna copy this again. Put it right here and just change this to a 2 and a 2. Okay, save this and we'll go back in Unity and press play. So if we go here, I'm just gonna try to make a quick way to win. And if we go right here, yeah, there you go. Player 1 won. Okay, that's what we want. And so now we'll just do the diagonals and the vertical real quick. So we're gonna go back down to did win. And I'm just gonna go make a new one. So this one's gonna be vertical. Yeah, remember if you put your like cursor right next to the R and press tab, it'll do an autocomplete. And then I can say like X again. And the length of this is gonna be the length of the board. This one's not gonna be -3 because it's gonna be kind of the opposite. The height one is gonna be the -3 one because this one we're gonna be testing 1, 2, 3, 4 for our checks. So this one we're actually gonna go to the full column. So again, the second one is gonna be Y, and this one's gonna be the height of the board, -3 this time, because we only want to go up to this one to check the 4. So it'll be this one -1, 2, or -3 from this one. This one, we're going to be doing another if statement. It's going to be very similar to this one, but it'll look slightly different. If you tell by the end, all these statements are going to look very similar, but they each are going to have something that's slightly different. And it's just easier to check them all this way. There might be a different way, which is maybe more efficient, but that way will be a little bit more confusing to understand. So we obviously want to check the first one in the spot. We're going to be checking y plus 1 this time instead of the x, because we're going to be going up this time. Let's copy this. Now this needs to be +2 and a 3. Now return true. Okay. Now the last one, we have to do the diagonals. I think I'm just gonna copy and paste this whole thing this time instead of typing it out again, because they're very similar. So it's gonna be, there's not really a clear name for how to call each diagonal, so I'm just gonna call it y = x line from algebra or like graphing, which is the it would be this line right here. If you have another clever name, you could do like, I guess, northeast or something. I don't know how you would call it exactly. You could call it right up in either of those, but I'm just going to do it like that. It's mostly just for our reference. So right here, we're going to want to do this thing again, but this one is actually going to be -3 again. So it's going to be a combination of both these -3s because we're going to be checking this, 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 and this. But when we get to this one, or it'd be this one, we don't actually want to check any more to the right of this because then it will show up an error. Like if we started here, it would be 1, 2, and then it show an error. We also don't want to test anything above this third row because if it goes up there, it will show, or if we start like here, it'll show an error when it gets to the top. So we want it to look like this. Now in these, so we're going to be checking x comma y. This one's going to be x plus 1 comma y plus 1, and then plus 2 plus 3. And that's it for that one actually. So we're just going to copy and paste this one again. This one's going to be the y equals -x line. And looking at this one, if we start on this one, so that we'll say this is the first point, then we're going to be going down like this. So our reference x comma y is always going to start right here. So this point right here would be x comma y plus 3. I think this one's the most confusing out of the 4 loops. The next point here is going to be x plus 1 and y plus 2. You can see there's a pattern now, so x plus 2, y plus 1. And the last one's just x plus 3, y. And I'm getting those numbers by basing off the reference point, which is right here, but it can also be anywhere. Say it's like right here, then it'll be referencing from starting from here, and it'll be going through this one, this one, this one, and this one, just to check that diagonal. And that should be good. Let's just go to check each of those cases back in Unity. Okay, press play. This might take a bit to test them each. Try to be quick. Right there. There. Okay, player 1-1. This one, I'm gonna check to see if player 2-1 because I don't think we've actually checked that yet. So if I go the other direction now, check this one. Let's see. Yeah, player 2-1, and it detect that is player 2 this time. Last one, we'll check the vertical. Sounds actually pretty easy. Okay, yeah, and then the only other things now is obviously you can still play the game even when somebody won, and it's showing a bunch of win messages, but we'll fix that later. So we're actually gonna go back in the Blender now and create a little disk thing that shows which player won. So it's gonna like highlight each of them, just so it's obvious to the player which person won. When you open up Blender, you're going to want to delete everything in the scene real quick. We're going to be starting with a sphere, or not a sphere, a cylinder, because that's going to be roughly our circle shape, but it's not going to be a circle itself because there's going to have some 3D features. In the Add Cylinder tab, we want to change the radius to be smaller than this, because remember our circle is going to be roughly the size of one of these squares. So we want it to be, we can start with 0.5, but we want it to be slightly bigger, so it just adds some depth to it. So it's not just around the circle, we want it to be slightly bigger, so you can still see the pieces. Now the depth here, you want to shrink that a lot. Go like right there, I guess. Now, and you're going to hit Tab, and we're just going to add a little hole through the middle of both of these. Click it both, click I. Shrink it to about there. We're going to hit X and delete the faces. And now there's a shortcut to fill in the gap here. So if you hold down Alt and click the top ring, you can see how it's all selected. And if you do Shift Alt and click one of these bottom edges, now they're both selected. You can click space and type in bridge, and then you can just say bridge edge loops, and now it just fills in the circle. So now rename this to, we'll say win circle, and then go Control S, and again name it win circle, and it should already be in the assets folder as long as you didn't make any Blender things since we made the other objects. Okay, save it. Now go back into Unity and drag it back in. Let's see if this matches the circle. So make that 0. Actually fits really nicely. So yeah, it's going to spawn in like this, and we'll put some material on it just so it's a bit more colorful. So we'll do that right now. So we want to first make this a game object or a prefab. So we're going to drag and drop it in the prefab. Something pops up. Click original prefab. Now we need a material for this. So material, right click again, create on the top, materials, about a third down. We're going to call this win circle. Drag and drop it on there just so we can see what it looks like. We want it to be slightly transparent. I don't know if I did transparency yet, but if you click this little circle thingy, the color wheel pops up, which you won't be able to see, but it pops up. So there's if you have it, there's like a drop down menu and it says HSV. That's what mine's set to. So it has HSV, and then there's an A on the bottom. So the A is for the it's called the alpha channel, but it's basically how transparent the thing is. So we're just gonna set that into the middle, and I want to make mine green. So put it exactly green, or just whatever color you want. Let's see, I'll put mine, do like a turquoise, because I don't want to use like a red or yellow because those are already pieces and the blue's already the board. So we'll go like there, I guess. Looks fine. And the only reason why it's not transparent, you can see that bar on the bottom, that's the alpha channel. But to make it transparent, you want to click this drop down and select transparent instead of opaque. Or opaque. So now you can see it's slightly see-through, and that's looking pretty good. So when we actually spawn in each of these, it'll be transparent so you can still see the other pieces, even after somebody won. Okay, so we're gonna go here, apply. So back in Visual Studios, we're gonna go to the did win, and we're gonna be adding, we're gonna be instantiating or like spawning in each of those 4 things for the locations. First, we need to make a reference to the game object, to the game object we just made, the win circle. So we're gonna say public game object win circle. Now down here, we're going to say instantiate. Again, we need the object, so it's going to be the win circle. Location is going to be the location that we have here. So this is why we used why we matched up 0, 0, 0 on the board itself. Like if you look at the pieces position, it's going to be 0, 0, 0 when you spawn one in, and say if it's like right over here, it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it'd be 5, comma 3 would be right there, and that's what the X, Y, and Z are going to look like. Obviously there's no Z here, but if there was, it would match up still. Because if we go here, we can say new vector 3 for position, and in here we're going to put X, the X position, which will literally just be X, comma the Y position is the Y, and the Z position will just be 0. And last we need to do that quaternion.identity thing again. Okay, so this instantiates the circle right there. Now we're going to be copying and pasting this, and this one just does it for the first like x comma y. We need to do it for each of those. So we need to do it for this one too, so it'll be x plus 1, x plus 2, and plus 3. Save that, and I'm just going to quickly do that for each of these real quick. Once yours looks like this, we can go right back into Unity. Before we press play, we have to make sure that in the game manager, the wind circle is actually attached. So we're going to go to prefabs and select wind circle. If you want to, you can change the material again and make it more or less transparent. That's more aesthetic. It won't actually affect anything. Press play now. Let's see if we build up a quick one. Yeah, look. So now all the circles spawn in. Actually, I don't really like that color because it kind of matches in the other one a bit too easily. Let's do like, I guess a green. Not sure. You can mess around with that too. We'll do one that's really obvious, like a pink. Just go see what it looks like real quick. Because the blue, I feel like matched in too well with that. Yeah, it's not bad. You can always change it later. And like there's a little bit of a gap here between the board and the ring here. You can always just adjust that in Blender if you want to make the ring smaller. So the last thing we need to do for this is create a way to check if the player drew. So back in Visual Studio, so we're going to create a bool called didDraw. And to see if there's a draw, that's just going to happen if all the pieces on the top are filled in. Remember that if there's holes on the bottom, those pieces would have fall down, so you only actually have to check the top row. And you just have to make sure that we check the didDraw after somebody won, because you can theoretically still win if your last piece gives you a connect 4. And in here, we're just going to do another for loop. It's going to be similar to one of these up here. I think to the update board state, where you only have one for loop. Let's see here, we're going to have, we'll just call this X. And the length of this is going to be the length of the board. We're going to be checking if the board state, the X comma, this is now going to be, instead of Y, it's just going to be the height of the board, which would be, in this case, 6. But remember that this is actually index 5, so we're just going to have to say -1. And this needs to equal 0. So it's saying if this one's 0, then that means we want to return true or return false, because that means that the board isn't full yet. And then if it goes through each of these and it has a piece in it, we want to return true. Okay, now the last thing we need to check is to actually call this function. So we're going to go up to here to the take turn. And after we check if player 1 or player 2 won, we want to do an if didDraw. I'm going to put a debug statement dot log warning. And here we're just going to say draw. And right now these are just statements like this one, player 1, player 2 won, and the draw statement. Later we're gonna put some text and UI into it to make it a little bit more exciting so the player can actually read. Because right now these statements are only being shown to us. Like when we actually create the game, it will not be shown to the player. But this should be good right now. So I'm just testing this now to see if it actually shows did draw. It took a bit of time, so I didn't want to do that on camera. Okay, so the last one. Did it say draw? Okay, yeah. It says draw right there. Okay, so it does work. So that is the end of this video. I think the next video, the next video is the last one in this series, or at least it should be. And that one we're just going to be doing some cleanup on all these messages, because obviously all these, we don't actually need all these. Most of them are just kind of for testing, and now we don't need them anymore. And we're going to be doing a bunch of UI stuff so the player can actually see if they won or not, and a little selection menu. So that's it for this one.